girl Positink here, and today we're going to talk all about hands because they're annoying to me too, and that's fine, you know? So I'm gonna talk to you guys here, and I'll talk about shapes, angles, perspective, practice, and some stylization, you know? Just some flair. Yeah. So to get into it, let's just talk a little bit about this. So first things first, I know hands are hard, okay? I get it. I really do, because your girl been there, done that, still doing that. So the next thing I want you guys to really keep in mind, I feel like a lot of people, they tend to discuss more of, so basically I've seen a lot of people, they break it down into like kind of like sausages. I feel like that's most of what I see. My example of doing this is not very good, but am I drawing on the right layer? No, I'm not. Hold on. Okay, so there's sausages, right? And then we have like the big square in the center, and then you go like that, and you add like more sausages. I'm calling them sausages, but they are squares, okay? Like, we're just gonna add that in there. So yeah, it's typically in twos, and then you go down to the wrist. But yeah, so that's what I feel like a lot of people show, or they tend to show. But I would go even further to say, break it down even more. You guys can actually decide what you want to do, what makes it easy for you. I personally tend to do 2 to 3 shapes, whether it be like a square, kind of roundish, whatever. Like I just break it down into the most simplest shape that I can think of. So for me, typically that's like this. Actually, no, it's like this, and then I kind of just go like that, and then I just make kind of this shape figure. Yeah, and then I go from there. So usually if there's not like a reference, I usually just kind of imagine where my hands would be, and I add those in later after I've done this shape. And typically the middle fingers, your 2 middle fingers, are taller than they tend to be a little bit taller here than the rest of your fingers. So yeah, so that's what I do. And then you can move on to the next one. So again, you can continue to do the shape where it's like, in twos, and then you break it down. Sometimes I just do the one, and I just, trace along. But again, you can just simplify even more and just go one big, it's kind of like stickman level of practice, just, that much simpler, I guess. It's just, yeah, because I just feel like even if you're not adding fingers in, like, you get the idea in your head down, and then again you just go and you add in your fingers, as I keep messing up. But yeah, so that's basically what I do to continue, like, to start. And then as you get more complex, so you see how I have there's 2 here, there's 2 shapes. Typically I can maintain the 2 if I'm really lazy that day, But for something more complex like this one, I tend to try to do something along the lines of like a 3. So the thumb is always separate to me. So I always have this, and then I have, like, for doing basic, like that's pretty close. And then you get like your thumb. The thumb is just always gonna be there. So that's 3. So that's 1, 2, 3 shapes. And then of course there's like the wrist, but separate. So to me, it's always been like that. You can keep doing it here. So it's like this. I'm thinking about it. So we're doing 1. And then there's 1 more, And then because they have the fingers here, you kind of just add them in. But I mean, that's 3. This one actually could be a 2. We're going extremes. Again, I kind of just simplify it even further because, you know, if I go more with the fingers in the beginning, it overcomplicates things. Yeah, so that's the first part. Okay, next is perspective. So the one on the left isn't as extreme as the one on the right. For me, I've always found if we're doing perspective that we want to, so we're gonna draw our like shape in here. And you see how that finger in the back, the pinky, is a little bit smaller? Well, guess what, ladies and gents? You make it smaller. That's definitely a lot easier said than done, I know, but that's basically what you do. And you can do these things alongside me. Like, you can just copy, like trace. I mean, it's not as good to do that as you get more advanced because then you're not remembering as well. You should really try to do more on the side stuff. But you see how this finger just got gradually smaller as it went farther into the background. So this one on the right is a little more extreme. So you have fingers coming at you, which is definitely interesting. So if it's this extreme and I'm trying to draw, for instance, like on the side here, I would break it down into maybe those 3 parts. So, oops. Sometimes the more advanced shapes are necessary, but you can always try to do the simplified shapes and then add in the fingers later. But you see how this one's a little bit more difficult to do the simplified shapes because it is so perspective heavy. So for this one, yeah, it's gonna be a little bit more along the lines of like, well, there's a shape there, and there's a shape there, and there's, you know, there's the thumb, if it, you know, we want to call it that, and you add in the fingers and all that stuff. So that's all great. So we have the relative shape of this hand as I'm outlining it and not looking like I can do art, but that's okay, it's fine. So I'm gonna take it over, I'm gonna take it over to the right and just move it over here for reference. But you see how it's really lost that perspective, which when you're doing shadow work, that definitely helps. But for me, because if I'm looking at it, or even thinking about perspective, I just can't see it. So a lot of times what I do is I end up kind of doing like a caterpillar situation, and I draw the lines to aid in the perspective help. So maybe that means like just drawing these lines to help me visualize what is happening, like which direction the hand is going. Because if I don't have these lines, then, you know, you can't visualize it as well, if that makes sense. So that's what I do. I know a lot of people, they just do the shadowing. They just shade it in, put it all together, you know, which works, I think. But yeah, as you can see, you can already tell the hand is starting to look like it's coming at you more than before. So yeah, that's kind of a little brush on perspective, really brief, but yeah. So let's move on to the next part, which is practice. Oops. Let's get rid of this layer. Okay, so I brought up some examples here that I'm just gonna sketch for a little bit, and you guys can, I guess, watch. So this was kind of my warm-up. I will be honest, yeah. So the first hand that I did definitely was a little bit different because it had like the 2 fingers and it was a very slender hand. Yeah, so that one was there. And then the second 2, I actually feel pretty strong about. They turned out pretty decent, pretty close to the image. I will admit I definitely tend to practice hands like this more often that are more like separated like this, I guess, if that makes more sense. And then the last grouping, as you can see, I didn't do the 4th group of hands because for the sake of this video, I didn't want it to be like super long. But I did 3 out of the 4, and so as you could have seen from that little clip is that the first hand was actually pretty difficult to get because of the way that it looks with the, you know, just the perspective of it, like the way it's kind of squished but not. So in my head it kind of took a minute to kind of figure out how the fingers are looking and all that stuff. And then the next hand, also pretty difficult because of that one finger that's pointing backwards and the perspective of everything with it. I'd say it looks pretty close. It's not perfect, you know, per se. And the last hand definitely had a hiccup, so we erased. And I'll say this, it is a-okay to erase, okay? There's nothing wrong with erasing, okay, guys? Anyway, so the last hand I erased and I did it again. It looks a lot better than before. Again, not perfect, but I also didn't have a warm-up, so I'm gonna be okay with that, actually. So the last thing I wanted to mention after we discussed all of those things is stylization. So this is not my art. I'll be 100% upfront. This is a photo from Pinterest, and I'll also bring back up the hands that I drew. So let me just move this out of the way. So as you can see from this person's art, I wish I could credit them. I don't think I saw their name on the option to credit, but then this is something I'm working on. So stylization can be anything from like thick hands to thin fingers to maybe for instance I could have really emphasized on this hand like how big the knuckles are when they weren't actually, but I could have, you know, like could have gone there, could have been like, yeah, like these are thick knuckles. And you know, if you're doing some characterization, you're doing some character making, you know, that adds to the character. If they have big hands, like it's gonna make sense if they're a big guy or a big, you know, woman who, you know, who's like thick like that. Yeah, anyways, so this person, they also have pretty thin hands here, as you can see. So yeah, I mean, the only thing is, so I'm working on trying to use less lines when it comes to drawing, just to make it look a little bit cleaner. As you can see, I did have to put down some of the shapes that I was talking about earlier. But yeah, so I wanted to show you guys that stylization is possible, but definitely make sure you do practice. Practice is important. Even here, like, I definitely tried to stylize with those thinner fingers, like really emphasizing like a thinner finger. Yeah. And thinner fingers tend to be seen more in anime style, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah. So I want to end it there and want to just keep reiterating, like, hands are hard. No one's like perfect at hands, and there are actually I'll say this, there are art gods out there that are amazing at hands. For me, it's, you know, a work in progress. I'm not perfect. And yeah, so I just thought I would outline some stuff for you guys, and you guys let me know if you want to see more artsy videos from me. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one.